flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll establish a quorum, please, Marianne.
We have a quorum.
Approval of agenda, change of sequence or removal of items. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I so move to approve the agenda as posted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving to announcements, we will begin with the student representative report.
Hello everyone, I'm excited to be back this month. So Sam couldn't make it tonight because we had senior night. So our big issue that was brought to us was not very many students were taking school breakfast. So Sam and I sent out a survey to find out why students weren't taking breakfast. There was a slight time change this year due to accommodate the food service employees as well as our change in scheduling with the early release. So breakfast is now taken before school instead of in between first block and PPT. Our survey brought back that most of the kids that were interested in taking breakfast were, and we found that since the survey's gone out, students have adjusted their schedules to then take breakfast, so there has been an increase in breakfast. So we decided that that initiative has been solved. Our homecoming report, if you want to switch to the next slide. We picked out some pictures to share with you all to show the fun parts of homecoming because that is one of Student Council's first initiatives. I got some feedback from the students and other classmen that are on Student Council. Everyone really enjoyed the pep rally and other activities that the Student Council led, and there was great participation from all ages. It really showed great teamwork from the Student Council as it was our first time working together with the new group. I did get some feedback from some of the younger Student Council members, and they were, the good thing was they were just little things, is that some of the students wanted more chairs out during the dance and decided some of the dates for like Powder Puff and Powder Puff sooner. So it was just little things that can be easily tweaked for next year, and I have given that feedback to the younger Student Council members that they can use next year. Another concern that was brought up to us since the last meeting was that Spotify was blocked. Spotify is a music streaming source that was blocked on Chromebooks, but Pandora, which is a very similar, wasn't. This was very politely brought up to Dr. Watson and us by some underclassmen, and Sam met with Mr. Seymour, and Mr. Seymour solved the issue, and Spotify is now unblocked. There was a little coding issue, so now Spotify is available to students, just like Pandora, with any explicit songs that are not available. Any explicit songs are not available. Some of our next steps after this week is that there is a leadership event that is going to be both for junior high and high school student council members on October 20th at the Mosley RVA Learning Center from 9:30 to 3. So the student councils will get to work together and learn some different leadership skills on how to better run the student council. We are scheduling our next meeting soon to plan our next initiatives, potentially Halloween themed, maybe a costume day to keep the school spirit and the student participation up since we had such a good turnout at homecoming. And Sam and I are also going to continue planning our senior trip with the help of Dr. Watson and Mr. Jordan Rayburn. Is there any questions or concerns?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, the next announcement is State School Board Convention. Debbie?
I think that was removed.
It's on here.
No,
Okay.
Okay.
the
So-
October 20th special board meeting, was that on there?
Yep, that's next. That's next. Okay, October 28th, special board meeting to send the district levy.
Okay.
It's on my calendar,
All right.
7 a.m.
Yep.
we removed the state school board update just because there's really nothing that has changed since the
Okay.
reservation. It was getting redundant.
All right, we'll move to celebrations.
So I am happy to say we're going to be giving out our first Panther Pride Award of the school year tonight, and Dr. Watson and Mr. Rayburn will present.
All right, I'll read the award and I'll let Mr. Rayburn elaborate. Is that
Okay.
good?
Sounds good.
All right, so the Panther Pride Award. So this is for Mr. James Wright. We wrote for exceptional performance in FBLA in the 21-22 school year, resulting in first place regional, first place state, 9th place finish nationally in the introduction to information technology fundamentals category. James's dedication, expertise, and general character reflected well on himself, his family, his school, and his community. Explain on this.
Yeah, so just a little background, if you guys don't know James, I had James in 7th grade for the first time, and we do keyboarding, and I remember I typed at about 80 words a minute, and James the first day took a typing test, and he taught me he typed at 96 words a minute. I was like, well, James might as well just teach the class the rest of the term. So anyways, his first couple of years we were in COVID, so I didn't really see James much, but his sophomore year I convinced him to do feature business studies in America, because I knew he was very intelligent with computers. So he joined it, and Intro to IT is a 100-question quiz on basic hardware, software, cybersecurity, stuff like that, IT related. So James competed at the regional level. He came with us, and I think he really liked it. He competed against 12 other schools, so about 24 students, and obviously, as Dr. Watson said, he placed first, so he got to move on to the state level. He went with about 8 or 9 other students, and him and one other student actually placed first at the state level. So we hadn't had a student qualify for nationals in 2 or 3 years, which was pretty impressive alone. And then the fact that at national level it's 40 states, and they each have generally about 4 competitors. In his event, there was 130 students at the national level all competing, and he placed 9th. So it was really exciting. He's the first one in place since 2014. So.
Come for a picture, can you? You want to tell everybody what happened with your knee? You know they're all wondering.
Oh, wow.
So, beginning of the school year, I don't know how to explain it, but I guess I stepped on this foot the wrong way and I twisted my kneecap. I think a couple days later, I went to urgent care. They took some imaging and they told me to stay on the cane. And then later on, I went to a well child visit. We brought it up with my doctor and he ordered an MRI. So we got that, and then I think the next day I had to go over to the clinic again, and they said that there was quite a bit of damage in my knee and they had to do surgery on it. So they did, and now I'm stuck in this immobilizer until Wednesday. Then I can check up with the doctor again, and they'll put me in a hinge brace, and that's when I'll start doing physical therapy.
You've been doing a good job getting around. I know it's exhausting, so yeah, appreciate that. We're gonna give you this award for all the good work you did, bud. I just want to tell you how proud the school district is of you and how well you represent it. So.
Dr. Watson.
Panther Pride pin, and then take a picture with the teacher, okay? So set up a good picture.
Should I knock down?
You want me to take the certificate?
Yeah, hold that up. There you go.
Here you go. Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting one of first.
Yeah.
It's not awkward at all.
Yeah, do one of them. Yeah. All right, you got one else? That's right.
Thanks again. Thanks for
So as many of you may know already, the 2022 Pittsville Athletic Hall of Fame induction ceremony took place this weekend on Saturday. The inductees are listed in picture pictured up on the screen. I was able to attend the ceremony along with many, we had over 220 people in attendance for the honor. I know Cindy, you were there as well. It was a wonderful evening. And we wanted to add this as an additional celebration. I do want to acknowledge Dan Rayburn's work putting this together. I don't even know if we could track how many hours he put into this. And it wouldn't have happened without Dan and the work of the committee, but specifically Dan spearheaded this and kept it going. I would have visions that Dan might be acknowledged in the future himself for his work with this, but it was a wonderful evening. A lot of Panther Pride.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Tonight's academic spotlight, I am going to have Mrs. Friday introduce her team for the academic spotlight.
So our grade 6, 7, and 8 teachers, Mrs. Bienfeld and Mr. LaPrise, are going to be sharing how their team is doing with the PLC process and student work. The great thing is they've been collaborating on a team for a few years, but they are in a different capacity this year with Leslie being the classroom teacher instead of special education. So we welcome Mr. LaPrise and Mrs. Bienfeld.
Yeah, so what we want to talk about tonight is how we're using our Wednesday early release time and the work that we've been doing together. Leslie?
So one of the first units that we do with our 7th grade for the reading unit is an essential research skills unit. And we decided, since Travis and I had already worked on our essential standards, which was like that first step, that we wanted to start kind of diving into the common assessments, the I can statements. So we started with the project of this research project rubric, and it's a standards-based rubric with the I can statements right on the back. And the standards are linked right in all of the areas. And Travis and I collaborated on this, and we also collaborated with Nick Kuhn, the special education teacher, and also Chauncey at the high school. So it was like a vertical PLC working together. So we are getting that feedback from Chauncey, because this is like her wheelhouse and she's like the expert. So she gave us some really good feedback on how we could bring this kind of up a little bit to the level of where they're gonna need to be for when they get to see her in high school.
Mm-hmm. Like she said, the horizontal teams have been going really well between the two of us and the rest of our junior high, but we did want to get the vertical team involved, and that's where Chauncey came in, and it's been going really well, making sure that our students are getting exactly what, knowing exactly what we expect from them from these I can statements.
And the powerful thing with the rubric is that this can be something that is like pre-taught before the project is even given. So then the kids know exactly what's expected on the final project, so it's not a surprise for them. And they're not like, because some kids get really anxious and they want to know how they're going to be graded. So this way it allows for us to show them like step by step, if you want to get this grade, this is the column you need to fall in. If you want to get this grade, this is the column you need to fall in. So it kind of helps to alleviate some of that unknown and anxiety with the kids too, because they know exactly what to expect when we're grading them on those big projects. So this is kind of our next step is a PLC. We're going to continue working on the standards-based rubrics and common assessments. And then we're also going to start collaborating with Mr. Sherwood from the special ed department for our horizontal team PLC goal, so that we can tier our goal to meet the specific needs of all the individual kids. So lots of exciting things happening with the collaboration time, and we're very grateful for the extra time to be able to work together and to do things like this that we wouldn't have had the chance to do before.
Mm-hmm. On the next slide, you'll see we have examples of student work. These are some research projects from Leslie's class. In my class, they were doing more debating, where we would take the research that they've been doing and just get into the logical flow of everything and try and use our critical thinking skills to have debates on it, whether it was pre-written out or extemporaneous in the moment. So would you like to explain any of this?
So this is just, they pick like for their research topic, they pick some sort of social issue, and they had different categories that they could choose from. And both of these students picked climate change. There were other aspects, and they spent the unit researching. In the final project, they kind of got to be creative, and I let them choose the mode in the media for the way that they presented the project, which the 7th grade girls were really excited about because they're a very crafty group, and they went back to the old poster board, which I was really surprised how many kids wanted to do like a paper and pencil project where they got to do artwork and things like that. So it was just kind of nice to let them choose the mode for which they wanted to present. Because not everybody wants to always do a Google slideshow or an infographic. So this was a way for those artistic kids to kind of showcase their talents as well.
And on the last slide, we just kind of talked about a little bit of the ICANN statements like we already discussed. We already finished writing our essential standards, and now we're just working on that next level, trying to get more people involved so it's not just our two brains, even though I trust Leslie implicitly. It's nice to get those other people involved, and that's how we're using our Wednesdays.
Thank you very much.
Next question.
Thank you.
When it comes to these debates, right?
Mhm.
Debates on social issues, are these social issues provided like as examples of, are they given like examples of these social issues, or how are they coming up with these social issues? And what grade level did you say this from?
So those examples come from 7th grade, and those come from, you have a list of those, right?
So we're given with our curriculum, so with the units of study for reading, we're given a text set, and it comes with, I would say, probably 8 or 9 different like categories. And then we also let them choose, if there isn't a category that fits their liking, they can choose something else. So for example, I had a group of girls that was really passionate about like animal cruelty and animal testing. So then that was something that they chose because it was something that they cared about. So sometimes we give them some options to choose from, but then if there's something that they're really passionate about or they have ideas about, we let them choose their topic.
Very, very rarely will we like dictate a topic specifically when it comes to social issues or debates. I generally try and give them as much choice as possible. I'll toss out animal cruelty or climate change or whatever, but if they want to talk about homework, which is actually what a lot of kids chose for the debates, if they want to argue about homework, I am happy to have that with them.
So what are the rest of these 8 or 9 topics that were suggested that as examples outside of climate change?
So in my room, they just wanted to talk about should school days be shorter? Should we have single-gendered schools? These are all kind of topics that they want to talk about. In my room, where they're specifically be doing the debate stuff, in Leslie's room, they were doing more of the research. Would you like to?
So there was climate change, plastic pollution, and then some of the kids picked animal cruelty, animal testing, animal neglect, and then they also could choose from like gun rights and gun violence. Then there was freedom of speech, and that's the class. So like as a class, we have like a mentor topic that we study all together. So we have certain like videos that we watch based on like freedom of speech and like teen activists who go out and like show their right for freedom of speech. So that was one of the topics. But like we carefully go through the text sets to make sure that it's nothing too, but a lot of the boys are really passionate about like the gun rights because we have a lot of hunters in the area. So then I just let like Heather and Mr. Seymour know that we're going to be doing that kind of research so that it doesn't get flagged in the system when kids are researching those kind of topics.
So you had an equal amount of people, students on each side of each topic that were debating both sides?
So in my room, they were doing all the debating, and often when they do their debates, I say you have to research as many sides as possible, not just the side that you want to debate, and that way they have a clear, more full picture of whatever they're talking about. The side that they want to choose, I let them choose when it comes to the debate time. And this last debate, they all debated against me. there was no real two groups that had the same topic. So I just wanted them to choose something that they felt passionate about. And they all did a really, really good job. They would debate against me. And so there was really no question of like, what is the disparity or the ratio? We just didn't have to deal with that.
But you always had a counterpoint, even if it had to do.
And then in my room for the research, I just tried to group it as equally as possible, but I tried to give students their first choice. So they did like a Google form where they picked their first choice, second choice, third choice. And then I tried to group them in their first or second choice. And I did have a lot more kids that did like the climate change and plastic pollution. And then like a lot of the boys chose to like research like statistics on like mass shootings and things like that and things we can do to prevent those things from happening. And then we do again research both sides because the big focus is on like bias and knowing your bias because we all have, you know, ways that we feel about certain issues and we need to know both sides so that we can come to a debate knowing the topic and knowing the counterpoints that people will bring up. Because it gives you a stronger argument if you know both sides of the debate. So we do research like the pros and the cons, and then we also look for like connotative language. So if sources might be a little bit more biased than others, we look at like the non-neutrality of search engines. So we bring up like the example that Google is net neutral because it's, you know, trying to figure out what you like. So it kind of funnels information in a way that is like tailored to you. And we bring up the issue that like sometimes when you're at home and you're talking to mom and dad about buying Halloween candy, and all of a sudden on your Google or your Facebook or your Amazon, you know, Reese's peanut butter cups pop up, and we talk about that and how like, you know, the internet is constantly trying to figure out what you like and give you information in a way that's tailored to you. So we have to be aware of that.
You mentioned that you showed examples of activism for freedom of speech, like video clips or something, or recent events, or?
So the text that they use is an example, and it's older because I think the individual in the video at the time is like 15. And he like sues the US government about climate change. And so the kids at first think that, you know, oh, our topic must be climate change, but really it's about freedom of speech and the right that he has to, you know, like challenge thinking and be an activist for these things. And then we also like read some articles where like kids were maybe asked at school not to wear a certain kind of shirt because it had a message that went against you know, like what the school district wanted kids to be wearing on their shirts. And I can't remember, there's one more text I think that we look at, but it just gives examples of like New York Times articles or like, you know, like certain journal publications that are online.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next is the district administrator update.
So, yeah, could you go to, I wanted to give you some updates on some prior conversations and things we've talked about in the past quickly. Safety and security. We recently authorized the purchase of 9 additional two-way radios for staff as we were going through checking to see who had two-way radios and determined that we needed 9 additional radios campus-wide. So Dan is placing that order. That was part of that whole kind of safety and security. It's not the actual audit that we're going to have done by CSEP. We're going to be bringing in CSEP to do a security audit. They'll actually come on campus and they will watch our entry in the morning. They'll walk around the buildings. They'll watch as kids leave at the end of the day. They will give us some recommendations about security entrances, procedures that we can do to make things more safe and secure on campus. So that'll kind of a two-pronged approach. And then the digital map in the buildings, we're in that process of final portion of the grant process. It's extremely likely we're going to receive the grant funding for the digital mapping of our buildings, which will then be shared with law enforcement. And that should be happening sometime before the new year. and should finish shortly thereafter. So those are some safety and security upgrades and updates that I wanted to share with you. You'll see later for first readings, there's a policy coming forward that we developed for the use of two-way radios. And that was actually something else that we determined that when we were going through looking at the use of radios is we didn't have a policy about the use and privacy. People can pick those up off the campus in proper use. So that's one of the reasons that the policy is coming forward later too. Technology, we're gonna be doing a phone upgrade. We have had some phone issues with the phone system, and Michael's been able to determine that we're running the district has an older software version. So it's looking like either this Wednesday or next Wednesday when staff have their early release time, because the phones will be inaccessible for about 45 minutes. So it'll probably happen, if they can make it happen this Wednesday, if not next Wednesday at 2:05, it'll take about an hour, and that should fix all the bugs that we've been seeing in the dropped calls, phantom phone calls, those types of things with the system right now. The hotspots, if you remember, I gave the board an update that we had found that we had hotspots that had remained in service. Michael did a yeoman's job of reaching out to both Khajiit and US Cellular for the MiFis that we had, the combination. And it was determined that the Khajiits were much more cost effective with the same service because you could get US Cellular or Verizon on Khajiits. At the time we got them, that was not possible. They were kind of locked into one service because of the wide range of our district, 358 square miles. Some folks could use US Cellular, which is why we had to. The Khajiits are about a quarter of the cost per month, and we went down to 12. We kept 12, which was effectively about the minimum, 12 Khajiits for use if there were to be a need for more. We would be able to do that. We have about 6 that are checked out right now with those Khajiits by families for use for various reasons.
Do we still have Khajiits on the buses?
No. I don't know, Pam, I know we have discussed that, the reason that they're not on the buses.
They weren't being used, the data was not being used, those were taken off from Christmas here.
Question on the radios. Have we purchased the radios already? These 9 radios?
The purchasing is in progress right now. I think it's effectively the requisition was submitted, the 9. They're the digital versions of they work with our existing network of our two-ways that we have right now.
But they have capabilities of certain new technology. Are you considering now that you're concerned about the CSA audit and that they might find we don't have safe frequencies or something like that?
So actually, one of the things is, if you're going to use these radios, there really is no guarantee, at least not with the cost range we would be looking at for that security. And what we talk more about, Chris, is we're never going to share private, the information we're going to share on those, we try to keep it. We don't use student information on those, and that's part of that deal with that policy and the training. We want to focus more on what information is shared to make sure we're not releasing private information. And we do have a separate channel for the police and administration to go to in an emergency situation that we could communicate on. But the band on the digital ones right now, police, Jerry with the fire department all have access to so that they hear our conversations on anything that's on our normal channel.
And these new radios obviously are fully compatible with the ones that we have
Correct.
already.
Just newer technology.
Just as long as when CISA comes in and does this audit, they don't tell us, well, these radios have this issue and now we have to buy more new
Correct.
radios.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if maybe the purchase should wait till after this CISA audit.
If anything, what we're going to find is the ones we're getting are the newest technology. Is what they may tell us is the ones that we have that are the older ones, we may have to upgrade. So it won't change the new purchase because those are all the newer technology ones. But we could likely hear that we'll have to get more of these to replace the other ones. I don't know if that would be the situation because they're functional. It just doesn't give them the ability to go between the multiple channels right now. The digital, it's a digital, the newer ones will be digital. So, good question. State testing data. So, Forward, Aspire, the ACT data was released about 2 weeks ago. That is not embargoed. It's individual data for those test results. You can see that anybody can access that right now. You can't with the school report cards, which were compiled with that data, those are embargoed. So we have that information. We received it last Tuesday. I shared it with the administrative team. But the report card itself is embargoed until the middle of November because they need to verify that information is accurate. They give you a month to look through your data and see if there's anything that looks like it could be wrong, and then we can request that they review it to see if there are any errors in the data, which is why there's the embargo period that they send it out to districts to review the data. So that'll be sometime in November. Those will be released to the public at that point. And later, as part of our presentations that I had talked to you about when we do our district administrator update with the principals, and that we'll be bringing, we'll disseminate that data and be bringing components of that forward as we present to the board. And I do want to jump back to the academic spotlight you're going to see tonight. Is you're going to hear that great thing about that early release time and the value that's serving with staff, specifically the vertical piece that they mentioned. It's essential that takes place, and those are great conversations. It's going to allow us to take that data, get it out to teams, and be able to use the data to drive some of those meetings as well. So we're pretty excited about that. But probably about mid-November, it'll be unembargoed, and then at some point in December, we'll probably give the board a breakdown of the data. I will tell you, effectively, Dr. Watson and I have looked at some of the data. That's what you need a PhD to, no pun intended, to go through this data. It's not very user-friendly. The WiseDash website is just not very user-friendly. So what we're going to try to do is break that down into chunks that make sense to us as far as what does this mean to us. And it's nice to be able to do some comparison data and look for trends. We're mainly looking at the statewide data, the state average, and to see how we're comparing to the state average. So we'll bring that later after the embargo is over. The last piece is hot off the presses today. The Family Health Center of Marshfield. We met Gina Martinovich, school nurse, and I met with Eva from the Family Health Center of Marshfield, and what they reached out to us about was community health services for what are healthcare needs in Pittsville, both for students, for families, and for like our seniors in the community. As far as, you know, right now you're looking at a direct to Marshfield, Wisconsin Rapids, and trying to find appointments, and sometimes that can be prohibitive. You know, in the senior centers, we have 3 senior living centers in the community that finding a ride, you don't get taxis that will come to Pittsville to take them there. And then we have students that parents, because they're working 1 or 2 jobs, depending on the shift, may not be able to get kids to appointments. They would be looking at bringing a mobile health center here so that students can get appointments through their insurance, so their parents can schedule health appointments where it would then take place here in the mobile health center. They travel around. They do, like right now, I think they mentioned that they do a day in Medford, 2 in Marshfield, 2 in Wisconsin Rapids, but she had said the point with us, they're going to do a survey, a community survey. So we're going to send out a survey to all of our families, and we're going to try to get it out in the community on what our health needs are here in the Pittsville community. So what kind of things? They do dental. They work in several areas, and we're going to get that survey out. That will then drive what they will offer to us for services. So if there's a distinct need from that survey data, they had mentioned that it could be a full day of services per week. It could end up being more, and eventually what they would look at is if they could find a space, including maybe a space in the school or a space in a building in town, of having on-site services available to the community. So it's pretty exciting. And I had asked during the meeting, so is this a we'll see, or is this this is going to happen? She said if the need is there, this is going to happen. So we're pretty much, if the surveys indicate that the desire and the need is there, that this is something that is going to happen. So, Marianne, do you have anything to add? I know you've been a part of some of the conversations.
No, not really, not right now.
Okay, it's exciting.
But yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, they contacted, because I used to work for Family Health Center, so they contacted me.
So-
I said, let me put you in touch with the school superintendent and our EMT fire chief.
Yeah, and they spoke to Jerry. Had a call this morning and couldn't be on the call with us, but then he talked to Eva later in the day, and she gave me an update. So the big piece that we're going to fill to this is the communication piece, getting that survey out to our community and to our families of what those health needs are, which they just don't have access to be able to do that. So we're going to facilitate that for them. Okay.
And of course, the important piece is to make sure it gets out to the people who don't have kids
And that
in
is,
school.
that's correct. Kids people who don't have kids in school, we're planning on communicating with Mike McKee, it's up in the Pittsville record. They will take paper copies of the survey, digital copies. They actually even indicated that they would, if we were able to verbally speak with people to get a feel for the needs, that we could fill out surveys for folks if folks did not have access to technology. So if someone called us and said, hey, I'm not able to fill out the survey, that they said we could record that data and that they would accept that as data for them. So they want to get as much information from as many people as possible. Okay, so tonight I have prepared a kind of a brief overview of what we talked about at the last special board meeting, just kind of to lay things out. And mainly what this is designed to do is I wanted to give you kind of a plug in together and give you a timeline of what, you know, a vision might be of what would this look like if we were to engage in this process. So that's the goal. Some of this is going to be a little bit redundant. I also felt with us televising board meetings, now this would be a great opportunity for folks to be able to kind of understand what is strategic planning, because I know that can be in some circles, you hear the word strategic planning, people think of this cumbersome process that lasts months and months, as Fran said, and that you get a binder that gathers dust on a bookshelf somewhere that doesn't mean anything. So go ahead and go to the, oh, you already did. So a strategic plan is where you prioritize, you focus your resources, you solidify your operations, and ensure that all your stakeholders are working towards a common goal. I think we talked about that under the umbrella. Everything is focused on working towards those common goals. And eventually you get into that point where that guides your decisions and actions and shapes the future of the district. And that's that whole point by having that vision of what are we looking at 3 years out, 5 years out, because that's important, because you don't want to get too far down a pathway and then find out at that point that there's best intentions for many things. Is that we do initiatives, or we order, you know, a curriculum, whatever else, without having a long-term vision about what does the destination look like. And that strategic planning process will help us kind of envision what is it we want, and then we focus all of our resources to accomplish those goals that are set as district goals. And that has to have stakeholder input from the community, from the families, from the board, from the administration, from students. It needs to have input from all stakeholders. Go to the next one, Deb.
This is the next one.
It is? Oh, yeah, sorry. So what's a strategic plan? So the plan itself, and the key word in that is fluid. This is not, once this is developed, this is not like etched in stone. It's fluid because you're going to have changing environmental factors. Things are going to change. You could have an influx of students where your student enrollment goes up. You could have the opposite, where your student enrollment goes down. There could be other changes in your community that would change portions of that, but the idea would be it's not going to change. Those big rocks are not going to change. Those pillars are not going to change, but pieces of it, which is why you'll see in a later slide, we talk about that continuous cycle of improvement, is that every year you review these things and you go over and make sure that you're still focused. But that communicates the plan itself, what are the goals, priorities, and then what metrics are we going to use to measure that? Because we need to have data to measure its work, and it can't just be this feels good. And it's wonderful, it's a binder. It's like, where's the data? We need to have data. We need to choose what data are we going to use. And is the data showing that we're making progress? And it doesn't mean we're going to meet the goals, but are we making progress? And if we're not during that review cycle, all right, where are we not making progress? And then we dive deep into that and try to decide what changes need to be made to keep moving the needle. So it includes not only academics, but this is a big one for me, is the operation of the school district, which I'll get into in a couple of slides here. So why strategic planning? You're determining the stakeholder needs. And once again, that's all stakeholders. The coherence and cohesion with initiatives is a big one. You'll often hear this, and I'm sure Cindy could comment as a lifelong educator, as we often get while we have so many initiatives going. And often what it is it's really not, but there's a lot of overlap, but it feels like there's a lot because there's no direction. And I believe, was it Marianne who mentioned the difference between a shotgun and a rifle shot? And that's what it comes down to, is it feels focused towards a common goal. And so you need to have that coherence and cohesion. You're focusing your resources on maximizing impact with students. Solving problems is not about throwing more money or more people at problems. And too often we fall into that, is well, we need more teachers, we need this, and that can happen. You can do an analyzation of something and determine, listen, we are short-staffed. But the idea behind the planning process is to, you analyze your existing resources and you look at how you're allocating those resources. And a big one fiscally is, so we're doing professional development with staff, is it focused once we set these goals? Is that focused towards our district goals? Because if it's not, it may sound great, and it's not that we disagree with it, but we're going to allocate our resources, that finite amount of resources, towards those things that meet our district goals and follow that strategic plan. And that's why that piece is so important. Same thing with the structure for purposeful adaptation, meaning that we're going to get this. If we're sending people to professional learning, they're going to come back and use it. This isn't going to be this is the newest thing that's out there. It's going to be, this is purposeful, this is how it fits into our strategic plan, and this is what it's going to do. And then I mentioned it before, goals, measures, and action steps. You got to have those binders, they end up being dusty and sitting on a shelf because people don't have action steps. They get this the big goal is there, but the little steps that are going to get you towards that goal. The longest journey starts with the one step. You need to have action steps, and they need to be attainable action steps that this is how we're going to accomplish those goals. Okay. So why do strategic planning processes fail? Lack of clarity many times is you see too broad is the next one. You come up with all these, well, we have so many goals and there's 17 goals and it's too broad, and it shouldn't be that way. You should be able to narrow your focus down to those, we talked about those pillars. And then you build goals based upon those pillars. What's important to your community? What's important to your families and to your staff? No follow through. And that goes to the metrics. And the one thing I like data, and here's why I like data, because it holds us accountable, is setting those, if we talked about those performance indicators, our plan is to have performance indicators posted on our website available to the community. This is what we tell you, this is what we're going to do. You indicated, this is what is important to you. This is what we're going to measure that on, and we're going to show you where we're at on that, and we're going to give you those performance indicators, because it holds us accountable to the taxpayers and to our stakeholders. Not gathering stakeholder input, that was mentioned by Fran, is having a board or an administrative team develop your strategic plan. And we are not all of the stakeholders. We have, you are elected representatives, we are administrators of the school, but we need to gather that input from the community. And that can be done through surveys, it can be done through listening sessions. I have a sample at the end that I created of a survey I'd like to send out at some point about our mission and vision that we talked about as far as reviewing those statements to give the community some feedback. I think, we kind of determine one thing. It'd be nice to get some data from the community at large to see, because sometimes we get in our silos and we can be myopic from our viewpoint, and that happens a lot in education, where we see things from within these walls too often and forget, okay, what's the perception out with families and with our students. That stuff is important. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to change everything based upon that, but it's good to know what that feedback is so that we know areas we need to be able to communicate with families. I've heard some feedback about, well, a lot of times we hear, well, people don't understand. Well, that's our fault. If people don't understand what we're doing, that's our fault here. We need to do a better job of explaining to folks. So it's not a matter of they need to reach out to us for information. Then we need to do a better job of letting people know, with purpose, why we're doing what we're doing. And then not adapting to changes. We've all been a part of this, is you set a course and then it's like, no matter what happens, the environmental factors, we're going to that course. And that is not a recipe for success, is that you have to adapt. Now, it doesn't mean you change your goals or you change what your vision is. It just means that you need to adapt. If something's not working and you're getting feedback from staff or from families that this isn't working, the worst thing we can do is try to trudge through and just say, well, it's too bad. We set that goal. This is what you said in the beginning. You need to adapt to those changes when you hear that, and we need to kind of reconfigure and retool. And I'm sorry, if anybody has any questions, please stop me during this. I get passionate. I think I told you about this, and I'll ramble on a little bit. So what is operational planning versus strategic planning? And I know that operational planning, Pam gets excited about that conversation, as she should as the business manager when we talk about operational planning, because Pam oversees the fiscal component of the district. And when we talk about that, operational plan is our yearly plan. So as an administrative team, we get together every year and we set up, it's the curriculum, it's the staffing, it's the budget, those types of things. That's that operational plan. it's the vehicle that allows us to implement what we're doing, those things. How do we run the district during the course of the year? That's our operational plan that we set up. It's fluid, and we consistently assess the needs for that. As you can see, that happened this year. At points you look at things, and when's the best time to address something is when you're aware of it. And so that's what you look at. Then you bring greater coherence and alignment. You're gonna hear this, it's gonna be over and over again. That coherence and alignment in achieving our goals is that we need to make sure our operational plan is aligned to what our strategic plan is when we get to that point, is that what we're doing here needs to mirror what that strategic plan and what those pillars are. It can't be, people shouldn't be left with looking at our website and then saying, okay, that sounds great, but what's going on in the buildings? Why is what we're seeing, or, you know, that our kids are talking about not what's happening in the buildings? So this is the, just that strategic planning cycle. This is a yearly thing. You go through again, and your strategy, and you're talking about the SWOT analysis. I don't know how many of you have been a part of the SWOT analysis before. In strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the big one we try to focus on, we did a SWOT analysis this summer as an administrative team and identified those. And then the ones that we identified as threats are the ones you focus on, as far as, all right, which of these threats can be addressed? Like, I don't want this to sound like it's a threats like we eliminate, you know, when we have Rod on our team here with military intelligence. It's like, we're not talking about, is it making threats disappear? It's, can we address what these threats might be? What are they? And you try to pick as many of those off as you can by addressing those. And then you constantly are reviewing that. Where are we at? Are those things still a threat? It might be what I mentioned earlier about the communication, is that if people are saying, I'm not understanding, then we need to do a better job of communicating with our stakeholders, and not just feedback. I do those weekly Friday community updates to families. Well, we started posting them in the Pittsville Record because there's a lot of folks who don't have families that don't get those, that are able to see that in Pittsville Record, because it's a good thing if they have some knowledge about what we're doing here and feel like they're connected to the school. So we need to look at ways to reach all of our stakeholders, not say, well, it's on our website, you need to come and find it. It doesn't work that way. The reality is there's some folks who either aren't tech savvy or don't have access to the technology that make up more of our population, as we've heard Mary Ann say, than our families do, as far as that in the community. So it's knowing your stakeholders. And then that's a yearly process. And honestly, that's happening more than once a year. You should be doing this on a repeated basis, where you're doing that analysis through that continuous improvement cycle. And that's it. You're never going to stop. Those goals are going to change. You're always going to be working and moving forward. So this is the proposed timeline, and this is a tentative timeline. This was just something that we looked at. This was based upon our last meeting and talking with Fran, is to look at the fall. I will, after we go through this slide, the next slide is going to have a link to the actual survey that I created, that I would propose we send out regarding mission, vision, and belief statements, our district statements. And this would be just to gather some input from the community on those topics. And this would also be something that we would, and we're still working on what that would look like. We may have to end up mailing those, rather than, because you put it in the Pittsville Record, it still isn't going to get the information back to us. So gather and review the survey data. That's important. Is let's gather that data and then kind of go through it and see what does it tell us. It could be split right down the middle. It could be that anything over 15%. If you get over 15% return rate on surveys, that's a pretty good indicator. That's a great response rate. I think people think you got to have 50%. There's a lot of data, but if you get 15%, that's a pretty good representation of what your data is going to be. If you had 80%, it's going to fluctuate by a couple of percentage points. So if we can get at least 15%, and that would be families, staff, board members, administrators, and community members. We want to get that out to as many people as possible and get that information. So then in the winter, this next part is going to take place anyway. This is a process that we do on a yearly basis as a school district. Is we analyze our enrollment data. We look at like what are our class sizes coming through, because that'll have an impact at the K, or specifically at the K3 level. When you're looking at, if you have a bubble class coming through, you might be moving a teacher from year to year with that bubble class. What do we have coming through with our early childhood numbers, those types of things. And I contacted CISA 5 to ask, so we have administrators, we have 3 administrators that have CNI degrees and one that is actually working towards a CNI degree. So we have a lot of curriculum instruction persons on there. That's not our primary hat we wear. And those folks are a special breed that review data and dig into the data. And I really felt like in this preliminary stages, I wanted to reach out to see if there was someone that was a data specialist, and CESA has been wonderful for us for services. They said we absolutely do, and they have persons who are data specialists that would come in and they would spend some time, they would break our data down. They would then tell us, here are some things you should focus on. These are takeaways we have, and share that with us. Eventually, that would lead, we would like to do that coming up in the winter to review our current data, because this is the thing for me. And I had to chuckle a little bit with Mary Ann's, I had said something out to a group and Mary Ann was like, we better slow down. And I was like, boy, if Mary Ann's telling me to slow down, I better slow down. Because normally Mary Ann's like me, he's like, let's go. And the important thing to us is, as an administrative team, is the process, the strategic planning process would happen in the spring and going into next school year with those things. We have kids in our buildings right now that need us to keep moving forward. So looking at that data now to drive some of our instruction, what we're doing this year, so that the CESA piece of data, they'd come in, they would give us a kind of a cursory review of the current data we have, our report card data, and they would give us some takeaways. There are some things that jumped out to us looking at it on our own, but those folks would be able to dig a little bit deeper and point us in the right direction at that point. So that would be just be like a kind of a surface level service to get us going. The one we would look at down below where I put the data retreat, that would be a full-blown data retreat where they would come in, we would have community members, staff, board, administrative team come in, we would spend a day going through, this would be a deep dive of the data from all stakeholders. That would be a part of that strategic planning process. So the data review up above was more or less, let's look at our current data, what we have right now, and what can we do with that to move the needle the rest of the school year, because we don't want to wait.
Right.
You know, I would tell, I forgot to ask Mandy for feedback on the mini, the two buildings threw together a mini pep assembly for our K-8 students last week, and the whole idea behind it was let's get folks feeling connected. You know, we want younger kids to see a connection in those types of situations. So we could have started that next year, but the idea was, well, for this year's seniors, there is no next year, and we wanted them to be able to come down. So it's the same thing with the data. We can't wait till next year. We need to look at the data we have now and see if it's going, and it may indicate exactly what we've been working towards at PLC time. We're digging into that, but it could bring out something that maybe we haven't seen.
Okay, so I have a question.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
In that winter time period, that's where, what I think I heard you say is we're gonna be looking at our internal data.
Correct.
Our student achievement data and things like that.
Yep.
What about that concept of working with the larger demographic data? Is that, you know, in collaboration with the economic development planning process and, you know, possibly the population lab and all of that?
Yeah,
or am I
precisely.
jumping ahead?
Well, no, you're not.
Okay.
That would come later. So what Mary Ann's referring to is, many of you may know that Pittsville was selected as one of 5 communities for the economic development planning process. That was one of the reasons I reached out to Mary Ann and some other folks associated with that communities. I'm also part of that group, and there was discussions about some of the data that would be derived from this. And my question was, one important thing for us to look at in community our size is do a population and enrollment kind of data trend. What is it looking like? Not just with our 4K kids that we have, but what's behind that? What are we looking at? And these folks who do census data and stuff are able to go look, and they can kind of see what's available housing in our district, and they can project out what might your enrollment look like, you know, 5 years down the road. And that's important in this planning process, because if you see trends that are like indicating, okay, we have a declining enrollment, that's something to think about. If it's the opposite, you need to be aware of that. So the information I received is part of that process. We'll gather some of that data, because I actually became aware of a UW extension that's their area. That's what they do, is they gather enrollment data, they extrapolate all that out. They've been used by several school districts through their referendum process. They were solicited for that. Much of that data is going to be collected through this economic development grant, which means we would not need to bring in an outside resource to do that. It's already going to be a part of that data collected, which is a good thing for us. So that would be coming, but the idea would be that might be a little bit later down the road before we have access to that data. So we're going to look at the district level data in the winter, and our hope is, as soon as that other data becomes available through that, and we're a part, the school's a part of that whole group, we would have access to that data as well, which is gonna be very relevant, because we're intertwined. In a small community, the school district and the community are intertwined. And, as far as we want our businesses in the community to be successful, we want our community organizations to be successful, they want the school to be successful, so we're all part of this team. So we'll be sharing this information, but that was a good point to bring up. So we would be looking at building and district level data, but we also want to be able to utilize that community data that we would get access to.
The thing with this designation as one of 5 pilot communities, there's actually no money that comes with it, but there's expertise from UW Extension and the statewide level. A community had to be at least 1,000 people to apply for it. So, as folks that wrote the proposal were like, well, let's use the footprint of the school district, because people who live in Beadham say they're from Pittsville, and it seemed like the natural way to do it. And, so that's why it's going to be beyond just the city of Pittsville, but be more regional.
It could be happening at a more opportune time if we're exploring the strategic planning process as a district, because there's going to be a lot of correlation there.
Yeah, perfect.
So identifying programming and staffing needs, that's something we do on a yearly basis, or should be doing on a yearly basis, is where are we falling short, either with staffing or programming. And then I put that next piece in, and I know I will speak of the elephant in the room, is that people would see that and say, well, it's having layoffs. No, it doesn't mean layoffs. It means any organization should be looking at their efficiency. Like, are we being efficient with the people we have here? Rather than saying, well, we need, this is what we need, we better go look for a person to fill it. We may have that person on staff, and we may have the availability, depending on, registrations. That's happened in a district this size before. It happened in my prior district, which is a larger district, where we would have years where enrollment might be down in some classes, and we had people that were dual certified that taught other classes for that year just to meet those needs. So, that's that piece, is that we need to be efficient in our operations. If we're going to be, we're using taxpayer funding to do these things, we can't just continually be saying we're going to throw more things at needs. And sometimes it's going to come up that we've analyzed everything we have, we don't have that. That's fair. People will respect that. If we get to that point, we can communicate to people. And then the budget process. Your budget process should be based upon, once again, when we have that strategic plan and those pillars, is that your budgeting is allocated according to those pillars. If it doesn't fit under one of those 5 pillars or multiple pillars, then we need to reassess, or should we be spending money on it when we haven't found any resources. So that would be kind of that process that's going to happen here in the winter, and that would happen regardless of whether or not we were doing the strategic planning process. Because where does the strategic planning process make this easier? Because we have that big umbrella to work underneath. We know when we're having difficult discussions about, do we bring in this resource? It's, let's look at our pillars. We establish what our pillars and action steps are. Does it fit? When we're trying to decide how we're going to allocate professional learning resources, like the dollars that we have for people to go to professional conferences, does it fit under those pillars? It makes it easier for us to identify those things, but this can still happen and should happen on a yearly basis without, even if you don't have that should happen. So we'll be engaging in that process coming up in the winter. And at some point, we have to set those dates yet, is that we would have like our vision is to have a opportunity where we do like a budget retreat, where the administrative team shares the budget process with the board. We do a retreat where we can have discussions and we present to the board about those, the decisions and our recommendations as far as what we're bringing forward to the board for them to decide. Spring, summer.
I got a question about
yeah, go ahead.
Is there an audit we do yearly or every other year that makes sure we're compliant with everything we're supposed to be teaching? So if we get caught, like you're supposed to be teaching some form of math or statistics and you're teaching that or offering it, do you submit all our classes somewhere, or does someone come in here and look at it?
So you have, that's a good question, Nate. So obviously budgetary wise, we have an audit for the finances, but from the curricular side, it's one of the reasons that there is no yearly audit. DPA is not coming to do a yearly audit. That's the reality. They don't come in and they don't look at there are 472 school districts. They don't look at that. That's on the district administrator and the school board to make sure that we're following what we're supposed to be teaching. That's the responsibility within the district, and to make sure that that's happening. You have your state statute, you have your DPI requirements, the graduation requirements. It's the district's responsibility to make sure that we're in compliance with that. So does that answer your question, Nate?
Process we go through.
Well, so effectively how I would answer that is, yes, that is another important component of this, is that when you're going through analyzing those things, is that I feel very comfortable moving forward with our process for making sure that we're aware of gaps in resources. Okay, but yeah, there is no audit by the DPI. They don't come in and say, hey, you're not doing this. It's kind of the self-reporting piece, and you're responsible.
That's not a service like CISA 5 would offer or something like that.
Well, WASB would, I'm almost certain WASB offers a service where they would come in and do something like that, but it would be, I'm guessing close to $10,000 to do something like that. And we have the people capable in this district to doing that. And honestly, I wouldn't want WASB coming in to do that, but like, we're capable, here we have a better lens for that, what's going on. So it needs to be a process, something. It's one of those things that when you're doing that continuous cycle of improvement, part of your deal is that you need to do a curriculum review, and you need to be analyzing those things and getting feedback from staff. So it should be a part of what we do every year where we're going through that. We don't have like a curriculum committee or anything. That might be something to discuss in the future. Do we have a curriculum committee? Because in some districts that gives you that opportunity, that you have a committee that focuses on curriculum review. Does that answer it? Okay. So the data retreat, the large data retreat would be the CISA 5, and then that strategic planning process. I really liked that Fran differentiated between the company. There are districts that choose to do the 6-month process where it is, you're spending 4 hours, once a week for 6 months. And I am more a fan of the 1.5 days facilitated by WASB. And I've talked to several folks who have gone through this process. My understanding is, over a decade ago, probably well over a decade ago, we engaged in somewhat of a strategic planning process here, but it was kind of something that was like, I think we tried to do it within. And it's best in situations like this to bring in some guidance of folks with experience. And this is the big thing, is when you lead this as the district administration, it can feel like it's directed in a certain, the nice thing about bringing in someone from WASB to run this is it's like it's an outside person taking a look, and they're going to come in. They don't have any horse in the race. They're going to speak the truth, and they're going to help everyone feel like they have a voice in this process. So I'm a big fan of, especially with Fran. We were very impressed with Fran's services. If we chose to do this, I would love to have Fran, and again, he would be the person working with us through that process if we chose to utilize WASB for that services. And then what we would do is we would then set our district goals for the following school year in the summer, early in the summer, based upon that strategic planning process once we establish those district goals. And I think you remember Fran talked about, we have that goal, that the 21 composite ACT goal and the employability skills. Those are more, and we knew that. And that was the idea. We need to do it. We need a goal. We need to have something. And that committee did wonderful work, and we have a goal. Those aren't really district goals. Those district goals are going to be those goals based upon the pillars that we have, and in different areas. There would be a fiscal goal, there would be a curricular goal, there would be a student engagement, there would be a staff efficacy goal, those types of goals. So not diminishing the process that was done. It was fantastic, the work they did, and we needed it because it gave us something to work towards here. But that would be then we would set those goals, and Fran made a great point on this, because that's when your goals should be set. They should be set for the following year in the summer, early in the summer, because then you spend the summer laying the groundwork to hit the ground running when the school year starts. When you're starting the school year where you just built your goals, it's like building a ship or you're sailing across the ocean. So those goals should be set early in the summer, and then your professional development over the summer, your planning for your professional learning days when you come back are all based upon how are we going to attain those goals, and you're digging through the data and all those components. So this was a tentative timeline that I just wanted you to be able to kind of see what was going through my head, because there was a lot of things bouncing around there. I'm like, I don't want to put it on paper. I just want people to kind of see we talked as an administrative team about this. So I want would you go to the next slide? So this is the proposed survey. So this is this would be sent out to all stakeholders. We would have to use different mediums to be able to get it out to people. I just put some dates on there. And it talks about developing a strategic plan, and then it asks basic questions. First of all, what stakeholder group do you represent? That's important to know. If you see some disparities, drastic disparities between groups, that's data in and of itself to look at and understand why is there such a disparity. Next one would be, there's our vision. That is our vision statement that is up there. And then it would be continue to use this or consider revisions. Now, I was not smart enough. I'm Google One certified, but apparently it's Google 2, where you learn how to put a short answer box below a multiple choice. Maybe Heather knows. I don't know. So there'll be a blank below that for them to enter. Here's some revisions. And it may just be words, like these are words I'd like to see included, and then we'll be able to compile all that data. And then we'll do kind of a graph of those words that occur a lot that you see folks in, that's dated. We need to make sure we include that. The next one is, that's our mission statement. Same question related to that. These are those belief statements that Fran talked about. And Deb, where did we find these?
They've been here ever since I've been here.
Right, but they were on a piece of paper. They weren't posted in.
They actually are on our website.
They are on our website, okay. So these are belief statements, and these are important. Like these, arguably, I don't know if I would say they're more important, they're all co-important, but these are really important, that this is what we believe as the Pittsville School District. And let's review those. And it may be, yep, this is absolutely still true with what we feel is our belief statements. And then same question below, give us some input and feedback. And then the last question would be, I would be interested, this would be laying the groundwork in participating in the strategic planning process in the spring. And if they click yes, then they would go down and leave their contact information so we could compile a database of people that would want to be a part of this process in the spring. So that this survey we would be looking at, I would love to send this out sometime in the late fall, early winter to families. I don't want to do it too soon, because if you do it too soon, before we're going to engage the process, folks are going to forget that they filled this out and that they volunteered to do this. So it's that finding that sweet spot where you get it out there ahead of time where you can look at the data and communicate with people. So sometime in the winter, we're coming up to the new year, I'd like to get that out to folks and get that information. So, and that was just something that I kind of compiled based upon looking at what some other school districts had used in the past. So that's it. So questions. And I'm sorry, I was trying to be conscious of the time. I know I was kind of like speed talking here, but I know this was a lengthy presentation, but I think all important. I hope this is all helping to kind of tie everything together with these conversations we're having. So, Heather, is there anything you want to share administratively, Pam?
Okay. Will you be able to share that PowerPoint with us?
Yes, it'll actually, this PowerPoint is actually going to be after every one of the board meetings that are televised. This will be linked, my district administrator will be linked as a document on the website, on the YouTube channel with the board recording, so they'll be able to have access to the presentation.
But can we, right, I mean, like, do we have?
Do you have
as a
access?
board member, right, do I have to watch the whole presentation or can I just access?
It will be, to be clear, we will send you a copy, but it'll also be, it'll be linked as a separate file right on the YouTube channel, so you don't have to watch the presentation. But I would think if people wanted to, some people enjoy listening to my voice, I don't know.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
we already
Yeah, we'll
heard
set it
it,
up.
so I just want to, right.
Absolutely, we will get you a copy. So, and I want people to kind of, I would love to have the admin team and the board kind of beat this up a little bit and offer such suggestions. This was just something I went through the draft to kind of try to tie everything together that Fran had worked with us on and what those next steps might be.
Good overview. And I do think it meshes well with the larger community effort going on.
Great.
I think we should be able to get some really good data that's outside the walls.
I concur. That's all I have.
Okay.
And, well, you know what, I'd be interested. Sam and Maddie, do you guys have any thoughts as students on this, the strategic planning? And I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but you're pretty sharp.
And you got here halfway through, so I wasn't totally sure what was going on.
That was the best part, Sam.
I think it's really important. I like the idea that you're reaching out to the community where you can have representatives be a part of the planning process. That way there's all sides included.
And there will be student reps on it as well. It's important. Okay. Thank you, guys. Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Okay, next we'll move to the consent agenda items. meeting notice notification, regular meeting minutes from September 12th, regular special meeting minutes from September 14th, special meeting minutes from September 28th, financial status, and resignations. Oh, and academic and winter athletic co-curricular coaches.
I reviewed all this ahead of time, but actually I reviewed it yesterday, but there's an update on the winter athletic and co-curricular.
We had
Yesterday.
we had a Friday coach resignation, and what it'll be is that they had split a contract, and the one coach will be doing a full contract with the change.
Okay, I see the change.
Yep.
Okay.
So we do not have a coach, it's just they had split a contract, and now it's gonna be the one person is doing the whole contract, because the other person is not able to help this year.
Okay, sounds good. I move to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We move to discussion action and begin with employee handbook updates.
So we will go through the changes, and removals will be in highlight if you had a chance to look through. The majority of the changes were to update certain language, a lot of stuff as far as the organizational flow chart, just to make sure it was accurate with what we're currently doing. And that was a big one, is did what's in the handbook mirror what we've been doing or what we do? And if not, then we need to make sure that it's accurate. So a lot of the components were just updating that language to mirror what we actually do. And that's to have, fresh eyes on it. We went through it, Deb and Pam and I went through it together and spent 2 days, the portions of 2 days going through it.
Are there any questions or concerns about the changes as presented? Okay.
I scrolled through it and found all the yellow highlights. Thank you for the yellow highlights. That was really helpful.
In the future plan with the employee handbook component is to get staff feedback on the handbook on a yearly basis through a survey. It's something I feel strong about, and to be clear, that doesn't mean that the staff write the handbook. It means it's nice to have feedback from the folks, because they can bring things to light that a couple of these things that we actually caught that we were doing with staff shared. They're like, hey, this is what's in the handbook, and that's not how we do the process. So the plan would be to send out a yearly survey to staff to say, are there any things in the handbook that you'd like to bring to our attention, and just gather that data and discusses and maintain as part of this process that we would then go through. So the end process would be the same. We would be reviewing it, but we would have input in areas that the staff may identify as areas that we should focus on. It's good to have extra eyes on everything.
Okay, if there's no further questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to approve the updates made to the employee handbook.
I'll move to approve the updates in the employee handbook.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is the third Friday of September pupil count.
So effectively, as you probably noticed, up one student, which is in this day and age, what folks are looking for is, with declining enrollment pretty much rampant, is you're looking for stable enrollment or slightly increasing enrollment. The thing you don't want to see too, in some capacity, you don't want to see significantly increasing enrollment, because that can create issues with your class sizes and those types of things. So we were up one student as of that count. We did have some students come in right after the count. That would then be when you do the adjusted. Deb, when is the adjusted the next January? January. So, but good news, effectively good news is that, you know, we're looking at a stable enrollment.
I have a question. Is our RVA enrollment stable or up or down?
Yeah, it was in the
this year?
mid-teens. It was, I think it was 15 on my readers on. I can't see that up there. I think, if I remember right, it was at 15 or 17,
We were at 17, now we're at 11.
at 11.
Yeah. That was, yeah. We had lost quite a few regular students to RVA, and now they all came back.
Okay.
So they stayed for those, and I don't mean to be, when they go to RDA, they remain our students. They're our students just in that virtual academy. And then when they choose to come back, it's just a transition back into the building for various reasons. Sometimes we'll just find that's not a good fit and vice versa. So we allow folks that semester, you can switch, I'm assuming, yeah, I would assume, I think I read that we allow that change at semester.
It looks like from last September, we're only down one in RVA. Last September was 12, and right now we're at 11.
So pretty stable.
Okay, this is something that would need a motion.
I think it asks for that on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, the suggestion motion.
Yes, I said this is something that would need a
Oh, I'm
motion.
sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve the September 16th, third Friday student number 562. You all?
Sure.
Okay. Actual students in attendance reported to WISE data for student accountability, 550 reported to DPI for funding and revenue limit membership proposed.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I have another question.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I got this correct. We talked about ins and outs, non-resident reductions and resident additions. The non-resident reduction, does that mean we have 75 enrolling out and 63 enrolling in? Or help me
We are a
understand
net
this.
positive for in.
That's
what I
opposite.
thought.
It's the opposite.
I think
I'm
it's
gonna
we
tell
have to
you.
reduce it because we don't get funding for our open enrolled people. Like their district will get it, and so that's not how that works. So yes, the non-resident open enrollment, that's how many are coming in. And the resident open enrollment is who's going out, or how many are going out.
Okay, so 63 going out, 75 coming in. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is the second readings of the policies that we looked at last month. Those would be items C, D, E, and F. There were no changes to any of those policies in our first reading.
Okay, I move to approve items C, D, E, and F as a second reading. I don't know if that was the right way to say it, but,
It's perfect.
okay.
I will second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is first reading of new policy 522.73, portable radio use and assignment policy for district employees.
So as I indicated earlier, that policy, we did not have a policy governing the use of our portable radios or how they are assigned and collected and cataloged, so we developed that policy.
Can I ask where what
We
type
got
of
it,
radio?
through WASB and several other examples, we found them from existing ones with districts. We don't, we do that often when we're reviewing is that delegate WASB recommendations, but I kind of feel like you need to fit what works within your district too, so we like to kind of look and see what they recommend, but then kind of craft something that's more with our specific needs. So it's kind of a Frankenstein policy per se, I guess.
Oh, it is the month.
A good Frankenstein. The second one, Pam, anything to add on the student participation in co-curricular?
Other than it's more conducive now to not having to be changed constantly because it's 75% of whatever the IRS rates are.
I like that.
And where's that information, what those rates are? Is it just online somewhere?
It's always available online, yes, plus it's, like the advisors are the one that are going to be requesting it, and the advisors have access to that information on the, travel reimbursement form for them, so they would know exactly what to sign. Or they just need to ask me.
But they would give, or the students don't get reimbursed, they get paid for it while they're there, and
Well, the way it works is, it's a per diem, they get paid in advance, the students would. So the teacher makes the requisition to Associated Bank, the teacher goes, cashes that, and then gives it to each student. They want to blow it all the first day playing games someplace and not eating, then they're spending their own cash for eating, that type of thing. But that way it's not, they don't have to keep receipts, the kids don't, or anything like that, because we don't reimburse the kids. This is just a per diem in advance.
And that's state statute that we're not,
It's a GASB ruling,
The
it's a
GASB
government accounting standards board, yes. So it's very similar to the state, like the board gets kind of thing when they go to a state convention, very similar.
I'll move to approve, items G and H for the first reading of new policy 522.73 and the first reading of updates policy 371.
Okay, so this is the first reading, so we just move it forward for a second. So you're comfortable with moving it forward for a second? Okay. Everyone is? Perfect. Okay, then we will move to the legislative report.
No real formal report this month, except don't forget to vote before or on November 8th.
Okay, anyone else have anything to add? Okay, next is public comments. Deb, were there any? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. All right.
Cindy, drop some money.
Oh, you're